Hello, welcome to Belts and Braces. So this time on Project T5, we're going to probably undo some work we've already done under the car, but we're going to look at putting a brace on. However, that's in Scotland and I'm not. But we're also going to look at doing the cam belt, which is an absolute essential for a car that's got a cam belt that's been sat for the best part of sort of 5-6 years. So we're going to do everything while we do that: belts, pulleys, tensioner, water pump, whole 9 yards, so that it's good to go. So let's go have a look and get started. Cam belt with the help of the Haynes Book of Lies. So as you can see, there is not an awful lot of space down here, so this could be a little bit tricky, but we've got all OEM genuine Volvo parts, so we can only hope it's going to at least go back together very well. How it will come apart, that's another question. Okay, so the first job is to take off the auxiliary belt here, which requires loosening this tensioner here. Now, if you've got a 3/4 inch drive socket or breaker bar, as I do, you can just about get it in the end of here. I actually could only get the edge of it in, but it was enough to tweak that and release the tension on the belt and then whip the belt off. I also had to jack the car up and then go into the pulley, which is below this flap here, and pull the belt off the bottom of there. So now we're at that point, we can actually start on the cam belt job. So this episode will only feature a condensed sequence of the cam belt job. The final cut was around 25 minutes, but I thought it useful, so if you want to see the full how-to guide for changing the cam belt on an 850 T5, then check out episode 8A. See the link above. So those of you that have done a cam belt change on an 850 before will have noted a small mistake I've made. So I took this plastic piece off that sits on top of the engine just next to the spark plug cover. Now that has actually got a little notch here and a little notch here. I wanted it out of the way so I can see what I'm working with a little bit better and inspect the belt. However, that now has to go back on because those two notches allow me to line up the cams before I take the belt off. So I'm just going to pop that back on and then line the belts up. So by handy coincidence, I have a spare engine. So this is really helpful to get some context on what it is we're doing. So you can see the timing belt pulleys up here with the little notches for your timing marks. And you can see the belt comes down, it comes around a water pump, which has clearly been recently replaced on this engine. Then around this pulley here, which is attached to the tensioner. Now this is the next item we've got to take off. So you can see the two bolts here we're going to have to access. They are going to be tricky because there's a chassis rail just here. The belt then disappears off behind this auxiliary belt pulley, and then it comes back up here around an idler here behind this auxiliary belt tensioner that we've just removed, and then back up and around the top. So it's a fairly simple system, but access is definitely going to be a pain. So here goes. So that is it, the belt is out. The Haynes Book of Lies says there is minimal clearance to get the belt off at the crankshaft end. That's an understatement. The temptation, of course, is to cut the belt and pull it out. As you're pulling it out, you run the risk of catching one of the teeth and moving one of the gears, but also you don't learn how to get the belt back in for doing the new belt when that's got to go back on. So all a learning curve, but fiddly as hell. Okay, so next step is to take the water pump out. So there are 7 10mm bolts around the outside of it, and then it's sitting on 2 dowels in the engine, so it does take a bit of a wiggle to get that off. As with all these jobs, you have to be prepared to be a contortionist, mainly because this piece of, I don't know what it's, plastic here, which holds on the outer cam cover, gets right in the way of any access you choose to try and attack it with. So it's fiddly, but take your time. Make sure that you clean off any remnants of the gasket on that surface. So I've been round with my contortionist hands, slowly cleaning away with a Stanley knife blade as carefully as possible, trying very carefully not to take any nicks out with the blade, which is easy to do. So now it's clean, we're going to put on the new water pump and we can actually start the reassembly. Woo! And if you're wondering what that is, well, I told you you need to be a contortionist, and I wasn't a very good contortionist, and I broke my nail on the edge of that when I was trying to tighten up the water pump. Okay, we have success. We have a tensioner piston down here, which is now bolted in. It's only finger tight to allow a bit of movement until such time as the belt is in. We still have the grenade pin in, which we keep in until the belt goes on, because that will release the tensioner and will push this too far over for us to get the belt on. Handy little tip is to use a bungee cord like this. Handy if you've got a strut brace to hook it onto, and that pulls the tensioner pulley up out of the way, so you've got space to get this plunger in. However, you will find that won't move into the right place if you're an idiot like me and you put the idler in upside down. So the idler has no locating feature on the block of the engine, so you can actually bolt it in either way. Which means if you bolt it in the way I did first time, it fouls with the tensioner pulley. And as it's just a little triangular plate with 2 bolts on, you can take it out, flip it round. It should be in this highest location here, closest to the edge of the cam belt cover, rather than down over here, which is where it was when that plate was the other way around. So with all that in, it's time to put the belt back on. However, I have made a boob. So there's a little white mark on there, as there's a little white mark there, and if you get to the right location, those line up. It's a bit difficult to get it in the right spot with the camera. You'll notice this one does not line up, because Numbnuts here has managed to knock this pulley while doing the work. So I'm going to have to carefully reset that to where it should be, and check this one hasn't moved, and check the main pulley down there hasn't moved before putting the belt on properly and releasing the tensioner. So the next job is to get the belt on, so I can get the belt on, put this plate back on here and check it all lines up first. So that's the next job. Let's crack on. So the belt is on after a god-awful struggle, such a big struggle that the neighbours thought I might be trapped underneath the car. So I've put this plate back on just to check the timing, and this is why it's incredibly important. So you can see the timing mark here, which is actually relatively well aligned to the mark here. However, my timing mark here is not, it's just there. Come on camera, spin round. My timing mark is there, my notch is here. So that is a tooth out. So this is going to have to come back off, and we're going to have to try again. The problem is this is right on the fulcrum of the cam, so it does like to jump a good few degrees each way as you're lining it up, which appears to be the problem, which is why these timing marks are so vitally important. So it should be around there, not there. So here we go again. So as you can see, I've now got the belt back on, and we have a nice alignment here. We have a nice alignment here. The trick was making sure to keep tension on this right hand side of the belt from the bottom pulley up, round over the top of here, and the pulleys needed a tiny little amount of change left and right. And when you're trying to turn them by hand, they do jump an awful lot. So I found a top little tip. If you use a pry bar across those bolts very, very gently, it will allow you to adjust just a fraction of a degree, which is enough to seat the belt into the teeth while carrying the tension over. Same again on that side, and away you go. And then it's just a case of wrapping it round and over the tensioner down there. And actually, once I got the right tension in here and the two pulleys in the right position, the belt slotted on relatively easily. So the final piece of the puzzle is to remove the grenade pin, which will set off the tensioner and put the belts all into tension. So here goes. Right, here goes. That should be the belt tension. Okay, so that is us done for today. That was a fairly mammoth effort, but the cam belt has changed. Everything is back together. You'll notice the tensioner for the auxiliary belt is back on, but no auxiliary belt. So I need to order a new belt, possibly a new tensioner. I don't know how good that tensioner is, and the pulley looks pretty ropey. So for the sake of fixing it, I might as well replace those as well. So these are just done sort of finger tight, and we'll do that next time. So this is a subframe from a Volvo C70 Cabriolet. So it's a bit more robust than the standard 850 unit and the early V70 unit. You can see a selection of cross braces, but also they come with these nice aluminium bushers in here to give it a bit more strength. They also have slightly different mountings for the lower arms, which is standard on all the later model cars. I'm not actually going to change that. I'm going to keep that for the T5R. Mainly because I've just spent ages putting the subframe back in. But what I am going to do is add this. So there's a secondary brace that goes on the back of the subframe. It bolts in through the holes here into the subframe in the same way we put the plates back on a couple of episodes ago. And just to be sure, but this has an extra brace which goes right back to further down the chassis, sort of right in the middle of the chassis, and just braces the whole front end of the car. Now, I don't know how much difference this is going to make on our now going green 850 T5, but I thought I'd have a go at fitting it and see what happens. Thank you for watching. Join us next time for episode 9, where I'm going to try and fit a factory spoiler.